Hi, my name's Sarah, and I guess if you've found this video then you're like me and you've been looking for somebody else to share their experience in relation to hip dysplasia in their baby. And I couldn't find what I was looking for, so I decided to sit down and note my journey, whether it helps somebody else or whether it's for my records. I have a 7-month-old baby, Arabella, and our hip dysplasia journey began quite early, but only treatment has really been commenced. So at our 8-week maternal child health appointment, the nurse noted that with her, it has written here actually left hip, audible click, medical review needed, but it's in fact her right hip that has the issue. So that was reviewed at 8 weeks, and that was 2 days before Christmas. And what was said to me was, look, there's a bit of a click. It's really nothing to worry about. Let's make an appointment for you to see me in 4 weeks' time and we'll see if it's still there. And she said to me, if you happen to be at the GP, get them to look at it. But if not, it's nothing to worry about. Don't stress. So I didn't happen to be at the GP, and we went back to the maternal health 4 weeks later, and the click was still there. And so she said, well, now you need to see the GP. You need a referral for an ultrasound. So off we went. We had that first initial ultrasound done at about the 12-week, 3-month mark. And the results of that ultrasound were that everything was progressing as normal. However, they just wanted to monitor it, and the recommendation for monitoring was in another 3 months' time. So we had that second ultrasound at about 6 months of age, and that's kind of when things started to take a turn, or in terms of our experience. So we went in that morning and we had the ultrasound, and my daughter Arabella was just absolutely beside herself. She hates other people touching her. She is very clingy to me, and so the whole experience of being in a dark room, somebody poking and prodding her, also wearing a mask because of the current climate we're in, just didn't go down well, and she was just beside herself. And anyway, the sonographer left the room, and she just wanted to check that she had all the images that she required, and to make a comparison with the earlier ultrasound we had. And she was gone for about 15-20 minutes, and she comes back and says, I'm happy we've got everything we need, you're right to go. And I get about 20 minutes down the road and they call me to come back. And so once I get back there, there's the sonographer, the radiologist, and a pediatrician from the Royal Children's all in the room, all playing around with Arabella's hips, all taking further images on the ultrasound. And I was kind of like, oh my God, if this doesn't mean that I have something to really worry about, I don't know what is. And they really can't tell you anything. I mean, obviously they want to sit down and review the images further before they make their final recommendation and write the report that needs to go to your GP. But the pediatrician did say to me, look, it's just her right hip that we're a bit concerned about. It is very borderline. So ultimately the decision is going to be up to your GP as to what to do. So anyway, 3 days later we go to see our GP, and I get a full copy of the report, and the recommendation is to, again, just monitor and see what happens. And I said to my GP, I'm really uncomfortable with that because of her age now. If we're talking about another 3 or 4 months down the track, she's 9 or 10 months of age. She'll definitely be crawling. She almost is now, and would be if we weren't in a brace. And she'd almost be walking. So if something preventative needs to be done, I would rather do it now than further down the track. And he agreed with me. And I'll just read you the results that we have of that ultrasound, just so you can see just how borderline this issue really is. So in terms of when we're talking about hip dysplasia, you've got the femur, so the leg joint that sits in the hip socket. And hip dysplasia is when that joint doesn't quite cover, or it doesn't sit properly. So in terms of interpreting these ultrasounds, they use a scale. So anything greater than 60 is normal, and anything between 50 to 59 is probable dysplasia. But when we're talking about the femoral head coverage, it's 40 to 58 as probable dysplasia. So the right hip is the issue here. And the femoral head coverage for the right hip is 58%. So the range was 40 to 58. And the left hip is 59. So we're talking about a 1% difference between normal and probable dysplasia. So her left hip is classified as normal, and her right hip technically isn't. But in the comments of this report, they still aren't satisfied. So it says, although the appearances are not convincing for developmental dysplasia, another follow-up ultrasound is recommended to ensure ongoing maturation. So even the sonographer and radiologist that wrote this report weren't convinced that my daughter had hip dysplasia. But in any event, my GP wrote the referral to the Royal Children's, and we had that appointment at the Royal Children's about a fortnight ago now, on the 14th of May. And let me tell you, that was a very overwhelming experience. And if I hadn't have spoken to a couple of people prior, I would have been more overwhelmed than what I already was. Nobody calls you and triages you with the possibility of what might happen at that appointment. So you really don't know what you're getting yourself into. So we arrived at our appointment, and the Royal Children's does clinics. So Friday morning is the orthopedic surgeon's clinic, and the waiting room was filled with babies up to teenagers, all with hip issues. They were in braces, they were in casts. There was a teenage girl that wasn't walking properly. It was very overwhelming and upsetting. I was getting myself quite worked up in the waiting room before we even went in for our appointment. And by the time we did get in, they again do an ultrasound, because they want to see from the time when the referral was made, when you had that ultrasound, to when you get there, if anything's matured. And for us, yes, the left hip had further improved, but the right hip was still an issue, still sitting at that 58%. And what she said to me is, for a baby 6 months or older, you really want that percentage to be over 60, and we're just not quite there. So the recommendation was to brace Arabella in a Dennis Brown brace. And I had prepared myself for her to be braced, but based on such a mild diagnosis, I thought that we would just be in it at night time. So when she turned around and said, the brace will be worn 23 hours a day, you can take it off for an hour at night time to bath and do a bit of tummy time, and then it needs to go back on, I was just blown away, really shocked. I got really upset. I just wasn't sure how to take the fact that I was going to have this little baby who is getting quite frustrated and wants to start moving, restricted in a brace, and also a baby who is a side sleeper, going to be restricted on her back. Sleep is not Arabella's strong suit, so I wasn't particularly worried about sleep being worse than what it is, because I don't think it could possibly be worse. But I was worried about her being comfortable, and worried about holding her the right way, and if she's in pain in this brace. But anyway, so they do brace the babies on the spot at the Royal Children's Hospital. So that's one thing that you need to be prepared for, and to think about what you need to take. And I will go through that shortly. So we ended up waiting almost 3 hours to be braced at the Royal Children's. We left home at 8:30 in the morning, and by the time we got home, it was 6:30 at night. And we only live about an hour and a half away. So we're out of Melbourne, but still not significantly far, but it was a long day. So they showed us how to put on the brace and how to take it off, but that was about it. It was like, here's your modified baby, see you later. So a couple of things that I wish somebody had told me going in, and a couple of things that I was told thanks to some lovely ladies that I had spoken to is, one, your baby is in a brace which the clothes go over. So you need to cater for the brace. Take with you clothes that are a size to 2 sizes bigger than what your baby currently wears. Bond zippies are perfect. They're stretchy. Take the next size up so that you can stretch them over the brace. The second thing is I use cloth nappies, and although pre-diagnosis cloth nappies are perfect because they help the hip positioning, they're not great while your baby's in the brace. They're too thick. The nappy needs to be fitted under the brace, between the bum and the brace, so you need to use disposables. So I always have a couple of disposables in my nappy bag, but I needed to make sure that I had nappies at home. So once we got home the next day, I had to go out and buy nappies, which if I had have known, then I wouldn't have needed to leave the house the next day, and I really could have just focused on Arabella and making her comfortable in her new situation. The other big thing is you need to consider your car seat. My little girl is quite petite, and we still have her, or had her, in the capsule. But with the brace, because of the way that their legs are, she would no longer fit in the capsule. So we had to install the car seat. But not only do you just need to make sure that you've got a car seat, you need a car seat that's going to be wide enough. So we actually purchased the Britax Millenia, which is quite a wide car seat, and I just took out all the extra supports so that she could fit into that nicely. Another thing that you should take just in case is towels and blankets, in case that car seat needs to be modified slightly because of the positioning of the brace for your baby. And I have heard a couple of people say that they needed to make sure that they had a letter from their orthopedic surgeon who had helped them modify their car seat in case you ever got pulled over by the police, to explain why this car seat had been modified. So that is something to consider too. I also wish I had taken some Panadol. I didn't think of it, and I wish I had have, because I have a baby that gets quite upset and quite wound up, and also they're going to be uncomfortable in this new position in the brace, and we had quite a drive home. So I wish that once we had the brace fitted, or just before, that I could have given her some Panadol just to calm her down and let her sleep properly on the way home. She did sleep in the car, but she woke up a few times absolutely hysterical, and I had to sit in the back with her and calm her down. So that's also what I wish I had have taken. Okay, I just had to go pick up my little friend because she woke up from her nap. But once you get home, there's also things to consider, not only in terms of the items that you need, but the care of your baby in the brace. And so the brace, they give you some like sock coverings that are just like this, a little bit thick, just to help the rubbing and stuff on your baby's skin. So you need to be careful that number one, the brace isn't fitted too tight, that you're cutting off circulation, and number two, that it's not too loose, that it's causing friction and rubbing, and that your baby's skin may break. We've been lucky we haven't had any issues so far, but I have heard a couple of people say that have had issues, that you can use a barrier cream like pseudo cream or something like that to place on any broken skin. You also need to make sure that your baby is still kicking their legs, so kicks from the knees, to make sure that there's no nerve damage. And if your baby isn't kicking every day, then you need to call your specialist and take the brace off. There's also things to think about, like whether they're going to fit in the pram that you have. If you've got a little baby still in a bassinet, is that bassinet wide enough? Is the high chair wide enough, comfortable enough cushioning, all those types of things. But I might leave that for another day. If anybody really wants to know the types of things that I have around the house that are working for us, I can go through that. But I hope that this video may have helped a few people in terms of hip dysplasia in their little baby. Remember that this is just our journey and what we're going through, so everything may vary and be different for you and your bub. But thanks for listening.